Hello and welcome to your embroidery how to stitch guide. It's virtually available and this is the beginning of your kit. You have a 3-inch bamboo hoop, some blue thread, some gray thread, an embroidery needle, and a needle minder. So you're going to take everything off of the fabric and gently unscrew slightly so that you can move the inner hoop from the outer hoop. You're going to take the inner hoop, place it below, and as best you can try to line up the pattern and gently place the hoop over and press down. Again, you can kind of pull the fabric different ways to stretch it out if it's uneven, and you can also screw the top to make it more taut for the fabric. You want to try and get it as tight as you can, but without too much pull. So the next thing we would do was find our needle, place that near our hoop, our needle minder, and we're going to start with the blue thread. You're going to start to slowly unravel the thread, and you'll notice that there's 6 different strands. And depending on how thick you want your snowflake to turn out, or your stitching, or how wide your needle is, you'll use different amounts of strands. I'm gonna try 3, so I'm gonna try and pull this apart, and this takes a little bit of time. It gets a little wrapped together. You can unwrap it with your other hand and split into 2. So now I'm going to take my 3 strands and see if I can place that near the hoop, get my needle minder and my needle. You're going to try and place the needle minder through the loop if you can, so it comes out the other end and it's inside the needle. So you're going to loop from the top, take the thread, however many, you can use 3, 6, you can even use 1 or 2. Drop that down and pull a little bit so it goes through the needle minder. You can kind of see that it's being held up by the thread minder, sorry, needle minder. And then you're gonna gently start to pull it through. And it might take 1 or 2 little pulls. And now you can place that to the side. Your needle is threaded. So if you'd like to, I don't always, you can make a small knot on the opposite end of the thread. I don't always feel the need to do that. So now we're going to start our stitching. So I like to start from the middle. I'm going to pick directly into the middle and go up and pull my thread through. And I'm going to leave a certain amount on the other side. So I'm going to leave about maybe 2 inches, an inch or so of extra thread. I'm I'm going to start to do something we're going to call, that's called back stitch. So you're just going to go about a slight amount above, try to follow along the lines, and pull the thread through. So you can use your fingers on the other side, pull the thread through until it's tight. And now you're going to go a little bit above that. And you might notice that your fabric moves as you stitch. That's okay. So this is called back stitch. We're going slightly above the last stitch, trying to make it about the same length. Oh. And that might happen. You might pull it out, and that's why some people make knots. And if that does happen, that's okay. You can always just retrace your steps. So you're going to try to aim to place it back in the same hole that was opened in the first stitch. And you'll slowly make your way up. And this might happen. It might get a little, clumped in the back. So just always try to pull through and take your time. Slowly building up the line. And right below the dot, you could do your last stitch. Pull your thread through, try to line it up with the last stitch underneath it, and try to get your thread tight. So now we're going to go back to the middle where you started. Pull through, and we're going to head down, trying to keep the same pattern and the same stitch. And sometimes you might want to turn it to get different perspectives, points of view, whatever feels easier for you. And now we have our first line in our snowflake. So I'm just going to repeat that process for the one that's going perpendicular. So now I've completed 2 of the lines for the snowflake. And I'm going to start the next one. This time I'm going to start it at one end. I'm going to draw my needle up underneath the circle, pull the thread through, and I'm going to start the stitch the same way we have been, just slightly going forward. And if you'd like to continue in the same way that we have been doing, you can go all the way across and then the same on the next one. If you'd like to try a new stitch, a little bit more difficult, you're going to take your needle and you're going to try to find the middle of this past stitch and place it where it's poking up and there's fabric or thread on either side. You're gonna pull it all the way up and go forward one. This is called split stitch. So you're literally splitting the stitch in half by going in the middle of it, and you're also splitting the thread in half. And you can do this even if you have one thread. You can still do split stitch. It doesn't really matter the amount of threads you have in the needle. You can always do split stitch. So this is a little bit trickier because each one you have to kind of play with the needle a little bit and watch your fingers a little bit more so that you can get the thread where you want it to be on either side. And you're just going to keep doing that across the whole way. See, it takes a while. So take your time and continue across, and you'll notice it has a little bit of a different texture than the back stitch. A trick that can help is to hold some of the thread with your thumb so that it doesn't roll and you can get the needle, but you have to be careful with your fingers. So I'm starting on my last line, and my thread is starting to get a little bit low, and I'm still doing my split stitch. Make sure you try and keep the fabric away so it doesn't get tucked under into the stitching. So if you feel like you're running out of thread for split stitch, you just go forward one, unravel, find the other blue that we had, and you want to find your needle minder, or your needle threader. I always say one second. So with your needle threader, you'll try that again. to get it go through the hole of the needle, and to get however many strands you would like to use through the needle threader. Pull it a little bit. And then you're gonna gently, and you might need to hold the needle threader as you try to pull the thread through the needle. And you wanna make sure you pull it till it's one, looks like one strand, and it's come loose on the other end. And if you ever do a stitch or something you don't like, you can always just undo it. You can always start over. That's kind of the fun of embroidery. So we're gonna look at that last stitch that's going forward, and we'll find the middle of it, and we'll start split stitch from here. So just, again, pull through, but leave some extra. And go forward from here. And if you want to go over, you can kind of do over the middle for split stitch. But then you'll be coming back through and you can always check in with your fabric. Make sure that it stays tight, it's where you want it to be. So now we've completed the lines in our snowflake, and we're going to move to the gray colored thread to add some detail. We're going to start adding straight stitch on the little arrow looking pieces to the snowflake. And straight stitch is exactly as it sounds. You're going to start at one end and finish at the other. So simply starting at one end and ending where that line finishes. your thread gets tangled, you can just unravel it. Sometimes knots will develop, and you can always just use scissors to cut them out. And then you want to kind of see which thread you cut and start to move back from there. So this will be excess thread, and I'll start again with this thread and needle it through. So rethreaded and ready to make a straight line stitch. And now we're going to go to the whole snowflake and fill in each straight line with gray. So now that we've finished all the straight arrows, straight stitching for the arrows, we're going to move to our last stitch, which is a little bit challenging. It's called a French knot. So we're going to start with this circle and gray thread, however much you'd like. We're going to poke and come up through the circle, again leaving some thread behind. So you're going to want to place this down and hold your needle. See if you can get some excess thread. Take your needle and we're going to slowly wrap it around one time. So you see that it's hanging over the needle itself. And then you're going to go back into where you came out of, the same spot. So you're going to slowly start to pull the thread through, and you'll notice there's a very small knot. And then we'll move to the next one. So placing it down, take your, I'm right-handed, so I'm using my left hand, going over the needle one time and pulling it tight, and going back down through the same hole. And again, using my hand to pull the thread tight to the side while the needle is going through. One time over, hold it out to the side and press down with the needle. And then you can continue to hold it if you can, or try and feed the thread through. And it might get messed up, that's okay. You can always just pull it out and try again. I think I'm gonna try some new thread. So just continue that around each dot and take your time. This is our most challenging stitch. So the back might be looking a little messy, and that's okay. You're going to take scissors and just leave at least 2 inches on each thread, but if there's anything more, you can kind of cut it away. And then flip over to the front, and you want to go get a blow dryer. We're going to use a heated blow dryer to remove the ink underneath the stitching, and then you will be able to see what you created. So you're going to take your blow dryer and you're going to turn it on the high heat until you notice the blue ink disappearing. You should see a difference, that there's no blue underneath your stitching anymore, just what you created. And if you do see more, you can always use the blow dryer for a little bit longer. So now we are going to finish the back of our hoop. And we're gonna do that by taking needle and thread and just starting wherever you'd like. And we're gonna poke outward and leave a couple inches here, maybe 2 to 3. And we're gonna start to go back inward and out. How to keep your this thread separate. We're going to be using that. So you're just going to continue going in and out. Across the whole circle. You want to get your stitches to be about 1/2 inch to 1 inch here apart, using the same thread. So if it breaks or if you run out, it's easier to start over using a longer piece of thread, because we're going to pull it all together in a minute. So when you start getting close to where you started, you will pull the string back inward towards the hoop, remove the needle, place it off to the side, and you're gonna pull on both strands, and ta-da! It closes the fabric for you, and then you can just make a few knots. Keep pulling. You want to try and make this as taut and tight as you can. And then you can just cut away the excess thread. If you notice any excess fabric that might be popping up, you can, and it's just the end of it, you can cut it away. But I wouldn't recommend it unless maybe it is exactly a corner. And now you have almost completed your hoop. There's just one more piece. So you're gonna take your ribbon See if you can lead it through the top of the hoop. And then you'll make a knot so you can use this as an ornament. Pull on both sides. If you'd like, you can maybe trim these a little. And ta-da, you have your